Doug and his family for hosting us on their farm. There's a lot of great Dutch farmers out here. Whenever I'm in this neck of the woods, I love to say, if it ain't Dutch, it ain't much. And you have a great member of Parliament. Give Scott a big round of applause. Scott is a fierce champion of the local people of the farming communities, and of course, he never stops talking about the Great Lake Simcoe. You all know him. As the champion of the lake, he's pulled more fish out of that lake than I think you're ever inside it. And he never lets us forget about it either. He's also a relentless campaigner. As soon as I got to the area, he said, Pierre, we have to go and visit a local seniors home. Because the seniors built our country. I said, they're not going to want to hear from a politician from Ottawa. He said, no, you're going to be a big star. So I walked in, I walked up to a lady, and I said, do you know who I am? She said, no, but if you ask the nurse, she'll tell you who you are. It's good to be grounded once in a while. Actually, Scott gave me a call a few weeks ago, and he said, I have a very important question. Do you believe in free speech? I said, of course. He said, how would you like to give one? And that's how I ended up here before you today, giving this free speech before this incredible audience. Whenever I drive across this country, I was just in PEI and New Brunswick yesterday, meeting with some of the great potato farmers out east, the fishermen, and the hardworking small business people. Or when I was out west, where I come from originally, the waves and waves of immigrants that have come to this country, all for exactly the same reason. It isn't the weather, right? It's because they want to carve a little piece of paradise out of that big, cold piece of land we call Canada, right? And it didn't matter if your ancestors came 300 years ago or 3 weeks ago. It's the very same reason they came here for freedom, not for free stuff, right? And, 100 years ago, when my great-grandfather came from France to Saskatchewan, and at that time they were settling the West, and someone asked Prime Minister Laurier, what is Canada's nationality? Now, if someone had asked that of a European Prime Minister or President, it'd been an easy question to answer, because over there, they define their nationality by ethnicity. Here in France, the nationality is French. Scotland, Scottish, etc. But we were already mixed up here in Canada, weren't we? We had First Nations, we had French, English, Scots, English, you name it. We already had it. So instead of defining our country by ethnicity, he said, Canada is free and freedom is its nationality. Freedom, absolutely. Freedom is its nationality. But in the last couple of years, people haven't felt so free in this country, have they? No. Big, bossy governments telling you where you can go, forcing people to shut down their businesses again and again until they're unable to reopen at all. Teenagers suffering serious depression because they've been cut off from their sporting and social events. Suicide. Or the other day when I was in New Brunswick, a lady told me the story of her best friend who got a phone call from her family here in Ontario that her mother was on her deathbed. But she couldn't get on a plane and fly here, so she had to drive through freezing rain for more than 14 hours to get here just in time to say goodbye to her mother. Countless stories how governments have bulldozed over the civil rights of our people, imposing the government's wishes on the personal health decisions of individuals. And when anyone speaks up, they get vilified or censored by a bullying and egotistical prime minister who seeks only to divide. And then there's the economic freedoms we've lost. How many 32-year-olds are living in their parents' basement because they can't afford the $868,000 for a home? How many single mothers who tremble when they walk down the grocery aisle because despite having among the most abundant supply of farmland on planet Earth, 4 in 5 Canadians have had to reduce the quality or quantity of their diet because food is too expensive. How many working folks can't choose where to go for a vacation because they can't afford $1.75 a liter of gas? A price that's going to rise because of the carbon tax that Justin Trudeau has imposed and that Patrick Brown and John Charest support. And then there's the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers that block our immigrants from working in the very professions and trades for which they are trained. All while we have a shortage of doctors here in Canada. The same gatekeepers block our First Nations from making their own decisions on their own land and welcoming development in their communities. Gatekeepers, the CFIA, who shut down our PEI farmers, blocked them from exporting their potatoes, forcing them to destroy 300 million pounds of perfectly good potatoes. These gatekeepers have held back our freedom and made us poor. And look at the inflation that has resulted from the government's policies. 3-decade highs in inflation. Housing prices have doubled in 6 years. Well, why is this all happening? Well, of course, for the same reason it always happens. When government prints money to pay its bills, more dollars chase fewer goods, meaning higher prices. Great if you're a billionaire. All your assets have gone up in value. But not so good if you're a wage earner. If we had inflation at this level for just 4 years, you'd lose a quarter of the value of your paycheck. Now, if your boss said that he was going to cut your pay by 25%, you'd say, take this job and shove it.
Right.
But what about when your government does it? By creating cash and therefore inflating the price of all of the goods and services. This is nothing new. You know, King Henry VIII did this as well, right? He used to melt down the British pound, which was a pound of silver, and then he remint it, but full of copper. And there'd just be a little thin layer of silver on the outside, so he could make more coins with less silver. Now, the problem was that his big ugly mug was on the front of the coin, and his nose would rub against the pant legs of the people carrying it around, and the silver would come off, so he'd have a big red nose on the front of that coin. And every time the English people saw that red nose, they knew the king had robbed them. Well, I want you to imagine a red nose in the front of our Prime Minister. He says, don't worry, it's just inflation, right? Just inflation. And so, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you back control of your lives by making Canada the freest nation on earth. Here's how we're going to tackle the inflation. 1, we're going to eliminate the deficit so that we no longer have to print money to pay our bills. We'll cancel the $100 billion slush fund that Trudeau is trying. We will cancel the wasteful infrastructure bank. We need infrastructure, but we don't need a bank. We have lots of banks already. All this thing does is pay bonuses to executives and guarantee the profits of corporations. Instead of that, we're going to get rid of that infrastructure bank, save billions of dollars, and I'll tell you how else we're going to save some money. We're going to defund the CDC.